Warning disclaimer, this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. All characters in this story are 20 years of age or older. This is a personal story shared for entertainment and emotional storytelling purposes only. I never thought I'd be the woman telling this kind of story. I'm the responsible one. The one who remembers anniversaries, keeps the house warm, and waves her husband off on work trips with a packed lunch and a smile. That was me. That is me, or at least, it was, until one weekend changed everything I thought I knew about myself. My husband, Daniel, had been gone for 3 days. A conference in another city, the kind where he calls once at night, voice tired, saying, "Miss you, babe." 2 more days. And you say, "I miss you too," and you mean it. You really do. But loneliness has its own kind of gravity. That Friday evening, Marcus showed up at my door with a bottle of wine and leftovers from the restaurant he and his wife, Priya, had just been to. She had an early shift. "Didn't want you eating alone," he said, shrugging like it was nothing. Like he hadn't just looked at me the way he did. Marcus and Priya had been our closest friends for almost 4 years. We took holidays together. Celebrated promotions together. I knew how Marcus took his coffee, and he knew I cried at nature documentaries. That kind of closeness. So when he stepped inside, I told myself, this is normal. This is just 2 friends sharing a meal. Except nothing about that night felt normal. It started with the way the kitchen suddenly felt smaller. Then the conversation went somewhere deeper than it ever had before, past small talk, past safe topics, into the kind of honesty that only comes out when the lights are low and the wine is almost gone. He said something. And I laughed. And then neither of us laughed anymore. I still don't know exactly when the air in the room shifted. But it did. And what happened next, I've never told anyone. Until now, Daniel and Marcus had been friends long before I ever came into the picture. College roommates, actually. The kind of friendship built on shared ramen noodles, failed exams, and 2 a.m. conversations that bond people for life. When Daniel introduced us at a rooftop party 6 years ago, Marcus had shaken my hand and said, "So you're the one who finally slowed him down." We'd all laughed. Priya had squeezed my arm like we were already old friends. That was us. A unit. A solid, comfortable, trusting 4. Priya was warm but quietly ambitious, always chasing her next career milestone, working weekend hospital shifts, turning exhaustion into achievement. Beautiful in that effortless way that makes other women pay attention. I loved her. I genuinely did. Which is exactly why that evening kept making me feel things I had no business feeling. Marcus, on the other hand, had always been the present one. The one who noticed things. If you changed your hair, he saw it. If you seemed off, he asked about it, not politely, but carefully, like your answer actually mattered to him. That night, sitting across from me with his sleeves rolled to his elbows, he asked how I was, really, not casually, and something in my chest quietly unlocked. I told him about the loneliness I'd been too proud to mention to Daniel. About how the apartment felt cavernous at night. About how I'd started talking to the plants just to hear my own voice. He didn't laugh. He didn't offer a quick fix. He just looked at me with those steady, dark eyes and said, "You shouldn't have to feel invisible in your own life." I felt that sentence move through me slowly, like warm water. At some point, we moved from the kitchen island to the living room sofa, naturally, without deciding to, the way certain things just happen between 2 people when the conversation becomes too important for hard chairs. Our knees were almost touching. He reached over to refill my glass, and his hand brushed mine, barely, just a graze, and neither of us acknowledged it. But neither of us moved away either. The music playing softly from the speaker felt suddenly too intentional. The room felt too quiet. And Marcus was looking at me like he was working something out, something he wasn't ready to say yet. But I could feel it coming. Here's what nobody tells you about long-term relationships. It's not the big betrayals that quietly hollow you out. It's the small ones. The dinners eaten in separate silences. I'm fine, that means anything but. The slow, creeping feeling that the person who once chose you every single day has started choosing everything else first. Work, exhaustion, distance, and calling it normal. Daniel was a good man. I need you to understand that. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't absent on purpose. But somewhere between building careers and maintaining appearances, we had stopped reaching for each other. Not dramatically. Just, gradually. The way a fire doesn't explode out, it just quietly runs out of air. I hadn't admitted that to myself until Marcus said what he said next. Does Daniel know how much you carry? Simple question. 6 words. And yet it sat on my chest like something heavy and long overdue. I looked down at my wine glass. He tries, I said, which was the most honest non-answer I'd ever given. Marcus nodded slowly, like he already knew. And then, quieter, Priya and I went through something similar last year. That surprised me. They always looked so composed together. So coordinated. The couple everyone else measured themselves against at dinner parties. He told me about the months they'd spent sleeping in the same bed like polite strangers. How Priya's ambition, the thing he'd always admired, had eventually left no room for them. How they'd done the therapy, said the right words, rebuilt something functional, but how certain feelings, once they go cold, don't fully come back the same way. Sometimes I think we stayed together out of habit, he said. And I don't know if that's brave or just comfortable. The honesty of it made my breath catch. This was no longer 2 friends sharing leftovers. This was something rawer. 2 people recognizing something in each other that their own partners had stopped seeing. He turned to face me fully then, arm resting along the back of the sofa, not touching me, but close enough that I was aware of every inch between us. Can I ask you something personal? He said. My heart did something it had no right doing. Yes, I whispered. And the question he asked changed everything. That I should tell you what he asked. But first, let me tell you what the room felt like in that moment, because the atmosphere matters as much as the words. The lamp in the corner had dimmed somehow, or maybe my eyes had just adjusted to wanting less light. The music from the speaker had shifted into something slower, something without words, just melody carrying itself softly through the apartment like it belonged there. My wine glass was empty. I hadn't noticed finishing it. And Marcus was close. Not inappropriately close, nothing you could point to and name. But close in the way that makes you suddenly conscious of your own breathing. Do you still feel wanted? He asked. Not desired. Not loved. Wanted. That specific, loaded word that means something entirely different when someone says it while looking at you the way he was looking at me. I opened my mouth to say yes automatically, the way we're trained to protect our relationships even inside honest conversations. But the word didn't come. It just stayed somewhere behind my teeth, too heavy to move. And that silence was its own answer. Marcus exhaled slowly. Not with satisfaction, with something closer to sadness. Recognition. Like he'd asked because he already knew, because he was living the same quiet ache from the other side. I haven't felt chosen in a long time, he said. Almost to himself. That's when something shifted in me, something I'd been holding carefully in place for longer than I'd realized. Because there's a particular kind of longing that lives in people who are loved but not seen. Who are cared for but not pursued. And hearing it named out loud by someone sitting close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off his skin. It dismantled something. He reached up slowly and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. One gesture. Gentle. Deliberate. His fingertips barely grazing my jaw as his hand dropped back. I didn't pull away. Neither of us spoke for what felt like an entire minute. The kind of silence that isn't empty, it's so full it has weight. His eyes moved across my face slowly, like he was memorizing something or making a decision. Maybe both. My heart was loud. My thoughts were gone. And then he leaned forward. He didn't kiss me. And somehow, that was worse. He pulled back, just barely, just enough, and pressed his forehead against mine instead. eyes closed. Breathing unsteady. Like a man standing at the edge of something irreversible, choosing to pause rather than fall. We stayed like that for a long moment. Foreheads touching. The world reduced to just that small, impossible space between two people who both knew exactly what was happening and refused to name it. Then his phone lit up on the coffee table. Priya. Her name glowing on that screen was like a cold window thrown open in a warm room. We both saw it. We both felt it land. Marcus straightened slowly. Picked it up. Stared at her name for 2 full rings before answering with a voice so composed it frightened me a little. Hey. Yeah, I'm still at Sarah's. She was eating alone, you know how it is. A pause. Her voice, tinny and distant through the speaker, I couldn't make out words, only tone. Warm. Trusting. Love you too, he said. And ended the call. He set the phone face down on the table. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. I should go, he said. But he didn't move. Probably, I agreed. But I didn't want him to. And that's when the second thing happened. The thing that complicated everything further, the thing I hadn't seen coming even as it was unfolding in front of me. My phone rang next. Daniel. I felt Marcus watching me as I answered. Felt the strange, electric guilt of existing in 2 moments simultaneously, the life I had, and whatever this evening was becoming. Hey, babe, Daniel said, voice tired and familiar. Just checking in. Miss you. How's your night? Normal words. Safe words. Words from a life I'd built carefully over years. Quiet, I said, eyes fixed on the floor. Just a quiet night. Across from me, Marcus was watching with an expression I couldn't fully read. Guilt, yes, but something else beneath it. Something that looked dangerously close to longing. After I hung up, the silence between us had a different texture now. Heavier. Woven through with the voices of 2 people who trusted us completely. Marcus stood up slowly. Reached for his jacket. And then, and I still don't know what possessed me to do it, I stood up too. You don't have to rush, I heard myself say. He stopped. Turned around slowly. His jacket half on, his expression unguarded for the first time all evening, raw and honest and asking a question his mouth hadn't formed yet. The distance between us was 3 steps. Maybe 4. He took 1. I didn't step back. Outside, the city hummed quietly, indifferent to everything. Inside, the candle on the table had burned itself down to almost nothing, just a small, stubborn flame refusing to go out. And somewhere in that flickering half-light, we were about to make a choice that neither of us would be able to take back. That he crossed the distance between us slowly. Not rushed. Not reckless. The way someone moves when they've made a decision they've been fighting for hours and finally stopped fighting. He stopped close enough that I could see the conflict still living in his eyes, because it was there, it never left, but beneath it was something stronger. Something that had been building quietly across 4 years of friendship, stolen glances neither of us had ever acknowledged, and one long, honest evening that stripped everything unnecessary away. He lifted his hand and held my face gently. Both palms. Like something precious. Like something he was terrified of dropping. And he said, quietly, almost painfully. Tell me to leave, Sarah. I felt tears prick the back of my eyes. Not from sadness. From the unbearable weight of being truly seen by someone at exactly the wrong moment in exactly the wrong life. I can't, I whispered. And he kissed me. Soft. Careful. The kind of kiss that doesn't demand anything, it just arrives, like something that was always going to happen regardless of every choice that came before it. My hands found his chest. His arms folded around me slowly, like punctuation at the end of a sentence we'd been writing all evening. It lasted only a moment. Because that's when the door opened. Not Daniel. Not Priya. My sister, Layla, 23, spontaneous, holding a overnight bag and wearing the widest smile that collapsed the instant she processed what she was seeing. The three of us stood frozen in that terrible, crystalline second. Marcus stepped back. I stepped back. The room rearranged itself around an absence that hadn't existed 30 seconds ago. Layla looked between us slowly. Set her bag down. Said nothing for a long, devastating moment. Then, "I'll make tea," she said quietly, and walked into the kitchen like she hadn't just walked into the wreckage of 2 marriages. Marcus and I didn't look at each other. We didn't need to. Because in that single interrupted moment, the spell had broken cleanly, and what replaced it wasn't relief. It wasn't shame either, not yet. It was the sudden, terrifying clarity of realizing that one kiss had permanently redrawn every boundary in my life. And Layla had seen everything. Layla never mentioned that night to anyone. Not once. Not ever. She drank her tea at my kitchen table with the quiet dignity of someone twice her age, and when Marcus finally left, composed, subdued, a soft goodbye that carried the weight of everything unspoken, she simply reached across the table and held my hand. No lecture. No questions. Just presence. That's the thing about the people who truly love you. They show up for the version of you that isn't perfect. In the weeks that followed, life rearranged itself in small, significant ways. Daniel came home. We had the conversation we'd been avoiding for almost 2 years, not about Marcus, never about Marcus, but about us. About the distance. The silence. The slow erosion of 2 people who'd stopped choosing each other consciously. It was painful and overdue, and somewhere in the middle of it, we both cried in a way we hadn't in years. We started therapy. Slowly, awkwardly, honestly. It didn't fix everything overnight. Real love never does. But it reopened something that had quietly closed, and that mattered more than I expected. Marcus and Priya moved to another city 4 months later. A fresh start, Priya told me over a farewell dinner that felt bittersweet in ways she couldn't fully know. Marcus and I said goodbye with a hug that lasted exactly as long as it should have, and not a second more. We haven't spoken since. Some chapters close without clean endings. Some connections teach you something profound about yourself without being meant to stay. And sometimes the most important thing a moment gives you isn't what you thought you wanted. It's an unflinching mirror held up to your own unmet needs. What I learned from that night, from the wine, the honesty, the almost, the interruption, all of it, is that longing is information. It tells you what's missing. What you're hungry for. And it's always worth listening to, even when acting on it would cost you everything. I chose my marriage. Consciously. Imperfectly. Daily. And some mornings, Daniel makes coffee exactly the way I like it, sets it beside me without a word, and I remember exactly why I did. That's not a small thing. That's everything.